least to me. Okay, so we are on Kufnun Aleph on the base. The word Itmar, I think it's 12 lines on the top. Last word on the line. Itmar. Manish Chemira b'mixus. We've been saying the whole time that a Manish Chemira has to be all of the possessions in order to indicate the person really means it, that they really want to give away everything. And in that case, you have all the different rules. And then some of the rules that we've mentioned will become clear in the Gemara. The Gemara will say them explicitly. But so this Manish Chemira makes this Amrua Rabbanan Kamei de Rava. If someone did a partial matana, he didn't give everything. The Rabbanan said in front of Rava, Mishmei de Mazutra, B'Shem Rav Zutra, Breder of Nachman was the son of Nachman, the Mishmei de Rav Nachman. But he said, B'Shem Rav Nachman, Harei Kamanas Beria, Harei Kamanas Chemira. It has both the status of a matnas beria and a matnas chemira. What does that mean? Harei Kamanas Beria, it's treated like a regular matana. Since it's only a matana b'mechzas, so it's not really a full-fledged matana. It's not a matnas chemira. So even if he recovers, he can't be chayzer. Since if he would have meant to make a real matnas chemira, he would have given everything. He wouldn't have cared because he didn't know he was going to die. But it also has aspects of a matnas chemira. The loy boy kinyan. Since he's dying, and he's giving away his matanas, according to the Shita, according to Rav Nachman, you don't need a kinyan. It has that aspect of a matanas kinyan, shchemira, that it's able to be koni just alpeh. Amalhu Rava lava minulchu leisislu buki shriki Rav Nachman. Have I not told you don't hang empty buckets on Rav Nachman? Meaning don't say something b'shem Rav Nachman that's not accurate. Hachi Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman really said is Harei Kamanas Beria. Rav Nachman said no, like we've been saying until now, that a matana b'michzus of a shchemira, when a shchemira only gives a partial matana, it's a full-fledged matnas beria. Nothing to do with a matnas shchemira. It's a regular matana, uboy kinyan, and it needs a kinyan. So now we're going to go back. We had been saying this the whole time in our Mishnah. We've been touching up our Mishnah that when we talk about a matana b'mixus, we said it's talking about whether there's a kinyan. So the Gemara is now going to ask that as a question, and it's going to say we're talking about a kinyan. Esrei Rav Nachman. Now Rav Nachman has said now that a matana b'mixus does need a kinyan, or else it's meaningless because it's not a matnas chemira, and if it doesn't have a kinyan, it's not a matnas beri either. Back there, Shaya Karka Kolshu, our Mishnah said, if he left over some karka, meaning he only made a matana b'mixus, matnasa kayemes, his matana is mekuyim. We say even if he doesn't die, the matana still remains. My lav delay kanu. The Mishnah doesn't say anything about being kaina, so l'chayru it's talking about there's no kinyan. My lav delay kanu minei. It's talking about loy de kanu minei. The Mishnah didn't mention it, but what it's talking about is where there was a kinyan. If he did not leave any karka, ein matnasa kayemes, and the matanas hamakuyim v'id economy amay ein matanasa kayemes. If we're saying, like we said in the first part of the Mishnah, that it's talking about whether there's a kinyan, why, if he's not mashai or anything, and then he ends up living, his matanas are not makuyim. Let's say because he made a kinyan, the matana should continue. It should have the strength of a matnas beria. Amalei hachiyam shmos chimer ashikasu kol nechasav la'acherim aval pisha kanamiyade amad chayzer. No, it doesn't make a difference. The fact that there was a kinyan does not change the fact that this was a matnas chemira. It's still he's still, like the Mishnah says, like the Gemara says, mitzvah ela machmas misa. We know that the only reason he's doing this is because of Misa. So, although it's true that normally a kinyan is not dependent on Misa, but if a person, it's as if he made a Tanai because he's about to die and he gave away everything. So that's indicating that his reason for doing it is because of the oncoming Misa. So when even though he made a kinyan, that doesn't change the fact that there's essentially a Tanai that it's only if he dies. But if he doesn't die, then it's going to be chayza. Eser Mishashia l'Rabba. He asked Rava, Maisa be'iman shel bnei Roichel, was the mother of the children of Roichel, shehaisa chayla. She was sick. I want to give my piece of jewelry to my daughter. It was worth 12 mana, 1,200 zuz. Very valuable piece of jewelry. Umesa. And she ended up dying. The Kimu Dvara, and the Chamam followed through with what she said. So, you see, this is a matana b'mixus, right? The 1,200 zuz, this piece of jewelry wasn't the only thing she owned. And even so, they were Makayim, when she was made, she was Makayim. But why? It's a matnas b'mixus of a shchibera, and it shouldn't be kimu. What it says is an afkamina where it's mitzvah machas misa. That means that she has like let's see the Rashbam four lines in the bottom. Hasam mitzvah machas misa. She's kira the medaeges misahi mechalekas, that she's giving or she's distributing her belongings because of misa. The mitzvah machas misa loy boy kinyan. Then you don't need a kinyan hechad the mace. Then you can shear ben leka shear. So you have to just clarify that this whole question about whether a person is a fully giving away everything or just giving away part of it is only an aid in determining what the person's intentions are, right? We said from the beginning that a ma'nas chimira b'mixus is not going to be a ma'nas chimira because the person is not really committed that it's a ma'nas chimira, that it's because of death. But if in this case, this woman who gave away to her daughter the jewelry, she said, "I'm giving you this jewelry because I'm about to die." So in that case, it doesn't make a difference whether it's a mixus or a full or all of her belongings, because we don't need the amount of what he's giving. We don't have to look at how much she's giving in order to determine what her intentions are. She said what her intentions are. Her intentions are machlas misa. So therefore, when she dies, even though it was only a partial bequest, it still is treated as a matnas chemir. This is just a new chiddush. Until now, we've always said that a matnas chemir always has to be all the possessions. Essentially, what we're saying now is, even if there's a partial bequest, if the person clearly says, they say bepeh, that they're doing it as a matnas chemira, it will be a matnas chemira, and therefore it will take place even without a kinyan. Ravuna Breder of Yeshua Amar, mitzvah machas mitzvah ba'alma. Oh, I'm sorry, did I? Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. I'm sorry, I skipped quite a bit. The problem is that the next one has the same teretz, so I just skipped to the teretz after that. Someone who says, give this get to my wife, and the shtar shikra to my eved, and he died before his instructions could be carried out. You can't give them after he dies. There's no such thing as being megarish. Someone can't be megarish's wife after he's dead, and he can't be meshachar eved after he's dead. Once he's dead, the eved belongs to his son. His son has to be meshachar. He can't be meshachar. But shnu mana leplaini, if he says give money to this person, a mana to this person, umeis, and then he died, yidnu la'achamisa, then we do good, we give it. Again, we just said a mana. A mana doesn't mean all of his possessions. So in fact, the Gemara, how do we know it's not talking about what he did make? So the question says, the Gemara's question is, we say yitnu la'achamisa, and we're talking about a partial matana b'mixus. How can you make a matnas chimera after misa on a matnas matana b'mixus? And if you'll say maybe it's talking about when he made a kinyan, like our Mishnah, we interpreted to talk about where there's a kinyan. Maybe over here also it's talking about where he actually made a kinyan. My delay economy. So you want to do me to get ma get la bar kinyan, af hainami de la economy. Just like a get, there's no such thing as being makna a get to someone's wife without her knowledge. You can't just be makna to her. It's not a schus. It's only something that's a schush you can be mak to someone. So you can give someone something, you can't give a get. So since the ratio of that Mishnah is not talking about with his of that brisa is not talking about with his a kinyan. So over here also it's no kinyan. So again, we're left with the question: how can someone give a mana leplini, make a matna shchimera, which is only a matana of mixes, and it should work? So we're talking about where he said specifically, "I'm doing it because I'm about to die." So that person, that's in that case, it's treated as a matna shchimera, even if it's not all of his possessions. Mitzvah machmas misa ba'alma by kinyan. He says, no, even mitzvah machmas misa is not enough. That's not. I don't agree with this teretz. Even if they said that they're doing it machmas misa, it's still not a matna shemira. If they really believed that they were going to die, they would have given away everything. So how do we understand these two brises that both indicated that a partial matana can work and there didn't seem to be any kinyan? So we're talking about, even though it said she gave away the brooch, or the second issue said he gave away a mana, the person was slowly distributing all his possessions. He didn't give it all in one shot, but he was working his way through. So he started with one thing, and then he was continuing on. So since, I guess it means even if he doesn't get to the end, but if his intention is to keep going until he gives away everything, so that doesn't. The problem is if he's giving away part of it, then that indicates the reservations of his part in this Ma'ana Shchemira. But if someone's in the process of giving away everything, then the fact that he's only giving away a part of his belongings is not detrimental to its status as a Ma'ana Shchemira. The halacha is Ma'ana Shchemira b'mikzas boi kinyan. A matana v'shchemira b'mikzas does need a kinyan, like we have been saying since we learned the Mishnah, that it doesn't. The afagav the mace mitzvah machas misa. The afagav the mace. I'm sorry. He needs a kinyan, and even if he dies, in order for it to be a kinyan la'achar misa, mitzvah machas misa loy boy kinyan. And if he makes a tzivui, if he says specifically that I'm doing a machas misa, then the kinyan is not necessary, because then it's treated like a matna shchemira. V'hu the mace. But that's if he dies. If he dies, then it's treated as a matna shchemira. But if he doesn't die, abad chayzer. But if he gets up, if he recovers, it's going to be like any other matna shchemira, that it's going to be a retraction. He never meant to give it if he was going to die. We're on the last line of Kufnan Aleph on the base. Avagav the konumine. Even though there was a kinyan, the kinyan doesn't change anything. Okay. Even though we just said a helchasa, so everyone gets a breath of fresh air. Now we're going to start something.
So the last thing we're saying, avagav the konumine, mitzvah machas mitzvah by kinyan, right? Is that all his possessions or mixas?
No, that's even mixes.
Even mixas.
Yeah, that's the whole point of mitzvah machas misa. The giving away everything is a replacement for mitzvah machas misa. Really, that's what a person should do. He should give a clear instruction saying, "I'm doing this machas misa," but just giving away all his possessions is sufficient. Itma matnas shchemera shekasav by kinyan. Matnas shchemera shekasav by kinyan. So Shbam is very careful to say, even though this sounds like we're saying that he's making a kinyan with a shtar, that's not what's going on here. So let's see the Rashbam. It's about 20 lines down. Shekasav by kinyan. V'hu adinim ein kasav kinyan b'seich shtar. It doesn't have to be where it's written that he wrote a kinyan. He's being makna in a shtar, even though it says shekasav by kinyan. Ayafilu ein kana shtar klal, even if there's no shtar at all. El shchemera shehisker tzavos shchemera shchol kol nechasav v'gam hiknois of a kinyan suder lebekabel matana. The Rashbam learns. The question over here is a person who made a matna shchemera. He gave away all of his possessions, and it's a very beautiful matna shchemera. Has all the tnoim that are needed, but then he decided, I'm going to do an extra thing. I'm also going to make a kinyan suder. I'm going to give to an aide a handkerchief, say, I want you to be zeicha on behalf of these people, that it should be kani to them after my misa. Rav Mishmei the Rav Amri. According to Rav, they say, Arkave Atrei Rikshi. You're riding on two horses. Shmuel Amar, Lo Yadana Mayadamba. And Shmuel says, I don't know what to learn in this case. The Gemara is going to explain what do those two phrases mean. Rav Mishmei the Rav Amri, Arkave Atrei Rikshi. Rav says that he's getting the benefits of both. He's riding on two horses. Hareyu Kamanas Beria, Hareyu Kamanas Chamira. He gets both the benefits of a matnas beria because he made a kinyan, and he also has a matnas chimera because he did the matnas chimera. He just added on additionally a kinyan suda. Hareyu matnas beria. He's like a matnas beria shem amad ein chayzer. That even if he gets up, he's not going to be chayzer. He made a kinyan outside of the dinim of shchemira, and that takes effect. Hareyu matnas chimera. It has the name of matnas chemira. Like we said earlier, one cannot convey a halva al peh, a milva al peh. You can convey over. You can give someone a note that says you owe someone something. In general, anyone normally, I can't say if Shimon owes me money, I can't say I'm giving to Ruvain the halva. There's no such thing. You can only do it, but with a maimed shloshton. So we said generally that doesn't work, but it does work in a matnas chemera. If someone who's a shchemera says Reuben owes me money, he can say I want that which I'm owed that money from Reuben to go to my son Shimon.
What happens if Reuben denies it?
Whatever, Reuben's not denying it, or he'll bring aid him, whatever it is. Yeah.
That's the case where we said that the Irish can be Michaelit, right?
So, right, exactly. But so we said two terutzim about how it works. Either we say since it sometimes works by matnas shemira, so therefore we don't. It's not a problem that it doesn't work by a barrier, but it works by ma'am shloshton. Or we said it's hareyu k'yirish. He's treated just like you can give over to a Yirish gets a halva. So it also goes a matnas shemira is similar to a Yerusha, so it also works. But in any case, it has that aspect. The point is that Rav holds that this person who did a matnas chemira plus a kinyan, he gets treated like a matnas chemira plus a kinyan. It's a matnas chemira in the sense that he can convey a halva, which he normally wouldn't be able to do, but it has the mila of a barrier that he can't be chayzer. Shmuel on the other hand said, "Liyadana mayadam ba." Shmuel says, I don't know what to do in this case. Maybe, again, even though we're saying the word shtar, we don't really mean shtar according to the Rashomam. What we mean is that he's made a kinyan, and this is necessary because of a question of the Gemara later. So, since maybe he made a matnas chemira, then he made a kinyan sudar, maybe the kinyan sudar is sort of like a chazara on the matnas chemira. If you already made a matnas chemira, what do you have to make a kinyan sudar for? So he says, so if you just make a kinyan afterwards, that from the you can't, if you get Irish, it's going to be a moitzim mechavik. We're going to say that this kinyan is not going to work.
So Rav says you have matnas of both, and Shmuel says you have neither.
Right, you don't have a matnas chemira at all. Rav says it's a matnas chemira, but it has some facets that should like a barrier and vice versa. And Shmuel says there's no matnas chemira at all because the kinyan blew up the
kinyan doesn't work well.
The kinyan doesn't work because you can't make a kinyan lachamisa. There's no such thing as making a kinyan to a barrier.
Could have happened while he was still alive, no?
He's saying I want it to take effect after he dies. You can't have both. You can't have a kinyan now and a kinyan lachamisa. Yeah, that means he made a kinyan, but what you're saying inherently is inherently contradictory. You can't say that the matnas barrier works and the matnas chemira works, but they work at different times. What Rav said that they both work lachamisa.
Right, that's why I have an easier
means
time
this-
understanding it. Shmuel's not learning that.
Showing that neither of them really, neither of them work. He says the kinyan is sort of like a retraction of the Ma'ana Shemira, but it's certainly not that the kinyan will work, because it can't. You can't make a kinyan lachamisa. You look puzzled. Okay. It's not the easiest svara. Barami de Rava de Rav with the Shmuel the Shmuel. We have a question. Both of them are contradicted by a different machlek stand. The Shalch Rav Mishmeder of Avo. Rav sent name of Ravo Haviyadi Shalch Rabbi Lazar Goyle Mishum Rabbeinu. Rabbi Lazar sent to the Golus the shame Rav. Rabbeinu is Rav. Shchemera Sha'amar Kisvu Utnu Mana Leplani. A Shchemera that said, I want you to write, to give a mana to Pliny as a matna shchemira, and I also want you to write it down so I'll have a star proving that it was done. Umeis in kaisen v'noisen. You don't give it. Because maybe his only intention was to become makna with the star, and the star won't work lachamisa. So this is the precise opposite. We're saying this b'shem Rav. This is the svara that Shmuel said. Shmuel said, if you make a kinyan together with the Ma'ana Shchemira, the kinyan blows up the Ma'ana Shchemira because it's shtar lachamisa. V'amar Yehuda Shmuel, hilchot ha'kaisim v'noisen. Yehuda says b'shem Shmuel that no, you write the star, you write this will indicating that was this raya, and you give it to Kasha de Rav, Kasha de Shmuel de Shmuel. No. The two cases are slightly different. The Rav le Kasha, that ha de konomine, ha de loy konomine. What does this mean again? There's so many different kinyanim. Ha de konomine is at the Rashbam on the bottom. Kedam marn shekasa b'kedin. We came into akne b'kinyan liafas koichay hubiyab. When the second case is talking about not where he made a kinyan, like the Rashbam explained in the first case, but rather he said, I want you to write a star, a piece of paper that he can have to prove that this was his matna shchemira. So in the case with his konomine, then Rav said that taka they both get it. But when he's not konomine, if he's just I'm sorry.
I mean, they actually made the Kenyan Siddur before he died.
Yeah, we made the Kenyan Siddur. So what the Rashbam also explains is that a Kenyan Siddur is more often done as, we do it by a chasana, right? The ladies break a glass, but you also pick up something. That it's often done to strengthen a Kenyan. So it's a liyafas as kaicha, which is a concept we're going to see. So in the first case, it's liyafas as kaicha, but in the second case, where it's not a kinyan, where he's just giving over to bring a raya, that's showing that he didn't trust the original matna shchemira. So that's the chalik he's going to make. The Shmuel kasha, and the question of Shmuel is also not a question. B'miyafas kaicha. The Gemara says that we're going to make why did he say in the first case that the Kinyan Sudar blows up the Ma'ana Shchemira, and in this case we're saying Kisvu Tunu, it does work. The Gemara is going to explain later, he wrote something very specific. He wrote that I'm doing this to strengthen the Ma'ana Shchemira. He said it specifically. There's going to be a lashon that he put into the shtar that says this is not in place of the Ma'ana Shchemira, but rather it's a enhancement of the Ma'ana Shchemira. It's to make it better, and therefore it's not contradictory, and therefore Shmuel wouldn't hold that it doesn't work. That's
so
exactly
what's the nafkamina between Rav and Shmuel then? I'm saying where would there be enough
No, the Shmuel Rav says it doesn't. Where would be a nafkamina? The nafkamina is
saying very similar thing.
Rav is saying no, but Rav is saying even when he wrote Lemiyafis as Kaichai, if in this case where he wrote a star, even though he wrote Lemiyafis Kaichai, it's not going to work because he's making a full-fledged kinyan. It's not. I'm sorry.
No. We said
Yeah,
when
because
did Rav say the economy in A, right? Is when
Rav
it
said
gives-
when you did a kinyan sudder. Shmuel would say a kinyan sudder is not a kinyan. There's no miyafes as kaichai, and he would say it doesn't work at all because the sudder is contradictory to the matnas shemira. In the second case, by the star, Shmuel will say if you write in this lashon miyafes kaichai, it will work. Rav will say even if you write that l'chayra, he's talking about the same case. He's saying it wouldn't work.
in that case, why wouldn't it work according to Rav?
So
Because Rav says ein kais v'noisen, right?
so if you want to look at the lashon of the Rashbam, ein kais v'noisen, 4 lines up in the middle wide lines, about 8 lines of Rambam. Acha shemes ein kais v'noisen la'acha meis shemeloi gamal aknes le'bal peh el ad sheyichtav hashtar. B'shah shenichli lav misa lav klumu del inyan shtar le'amar rabbanan divrei shkamira yiksum ksum dami el inyan matnas moment. He says that a star is worse than the kinyan sudder. And a star, even if it says liafasus kaichai, the person sort of puts his mind more toward the star. He has more faith in the star. Well, it's just I'm sorry, the person nevertheless it's distracting him from attraction of the Mount Shemira, according to Rav. It was written in the Shtar that this is to enhance the Mount Shemira. Rav says no, that's not what the person has in mind, regardless of where the Sefer can write whatever they want. That's not what he's thinking about. Yosef Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Achayre de Rava. Nachman Yitzchak was standing behind Rava, was sitting behind Rava, and they were all sitting. Yosef Rava Kamei Rav Nachman, and he was sitting behind Rav Nachman, in front of Rav Nachman, meaning both Rav Nachman Yitzchak and Rava was sitting in the base medrash listening to Rav Nachman. Kaboy Minei, and Rava asked Rav Nachman, Mi Amar Shmuel, does Shmuel really hold Shamalai Gamal Haknoisai Ela B'Shtar Ve'en Shtar Lachamisa? Going back to the original psak of Shmuel, not the case of where he wrote Shtar Miyafis Kaichai, but where he made a kinyan. Again, we keep on saying shtar, but in this context, the Rashbam was clear that we're talking about not a shtar, but where he made a kinyan. So he tried to make a kinyan of kinyan soda that would take effect la'achamisa. Does Shmuel really hold like that? A second question on Shmuel. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. We say Rabbi Yehuda said b'shem Shmuel. A shchimera who made a good kinyan of a shchimera that he gave everything he owns, alpha pisha konim even though there was a kinyan, amad chayzer. Even though he made a kinyan, if he gets up, if the person, if the shchimera recovers, then it's not a kinyan, and it's going to go back to the shchimera. I'm sorry. That's the teretz. Yeah, you do know that's still the question. Because the reason why it's a chazara is because the person died and it's a manash chemira. So we know the only reason he's doing it is because of the misa. So the question is, the mashmois is, it's only because he was chayzer. But I'm sorry, because he died, he didn't die. But if he would have died, this would have been a good kinyan. Shmuel is the man Amar who says if you have a kinyan on top of the matna shchimira, that detracts from the matna shchimira. So why are we saying that if he dies, then it's going to be a chazar? This shouldn't have been a kinyan anyway. We're talking about over here. We're talking about shekasa kol nachasa la'acherim. Afal pisha konim yada, where he also made a kinyan.
They should negate each other.
It should negate, right? That's Shmuel's shita. And Rav Nachman looked at Rava and he asked this question, and he just nodded his head. He waved his hand at him. The ishtik, and Rava didn't say anything. Rava accepted his This flick of the wrist. He come when they both got up. Rav Nachman by Yitzchak and Rava were both sitting in front of Rav Nachman. So Amar Rav Nachman by Yitzchak Rava. Rav Nachman by Yitzchak asked Rava, "What happened? You asked him a question, and he just disregarded it. My achbilach. What was he trying to say when he flicked his hand at you? Amalei b'miyafa es kaichai." We're talking about again the same teretz like we had on the first kasha of Shmuel. We're talking about where there was the kinyan was not stam a kinyan, it was a kinyan that included a statement that it's intended to enhance the original matna shemira, and therefore it's not a contradiction. Adarabba, if anything, it would make it stronger. What exactly is the case that is enhancement? Amar Chizda, where he says, this, I'm being makna to him, to be moisef on the matana. So there's a specific lashon that's saying, I am adding to the matana. Pshita. Kosav lazeh, v'kosav lazeh. If someone first gives a matna shchemira to one person, and they write the way the Rashbam explains it, and let's see the lashon of the Rashbam, so it'll be a little more concrete. About 15 lines down in the Rashbam, Kosav Lazev, Kosav Lazev, Shchemira shekosav kol nechosav l'rum matna shchemira loishna balpeh v'loishna b'chsav. The reason why I keep reading the Rashbams is because the Gemara often says b'shtar, and it means a kinyan, and over here it says kosav, and we're saying it means balpeh. So I just want you to see that I'm not. I want to make sure I'm not making a mistake. But in any case, this is talking about a matna shchemira, and he loishna b'chsav. But he just wrote. He said, "I want you to write it to clarify who's getting what, and also the person will have a piece of paper to be able to come to. You won't have to track down witnesses." It wasn't that he didn't give them the star at that time that should be the kinyan. He wasn't mocked to them with the star. This was just a piece of paper that he was planning that they should get la'achamis. So Yaakov was the shchemira. He said, "I'm giving to Ruvain all my possessions," and he wrote a piece of paper that's intended to be given to Ruvain la'achamisa. And then a week later, Ruvain was late to come take him to Minyan in the morning. So he said, "You know what? I'm changing my mind. I'm giving it to Shimon." And he wrote a new piece of paper for Shimon, like we've said. So Haina the Chiyaser of Dimi Amar Daitiki Mevatel is Daitiki. Daitiki is this type of star that concretizes, that where you write down the contents of a matna shchemira. A person could be chayzer on a matna shchemira. You could change your mind, like we said. This one of the rules of a shchemira is that he has the ability to change his mind. It's not like a regular kinyan. Up until the time he dies, he can change his mind. So that's pashut, that's not a problem to change his mind. Kosav v'zicha lezeh. Kosav v'zicha lezeh. So what does that mean? So Dr. Rashbam, to continue with the Rashbam, a few lines before where it gets wider. Kosav v'zicha lezeh. Kosav kol nechosav ruzin. Masale sashtar l'rayis chusay. And he gave him the star as a raya for his chus. So this case, he actually gave the star to the person who he wants to have it. So he made a kinyan in addition to the matna shchemira. So kasav v'zicha lezeh, kasav v'zicha lezeh. Rav amar rishon kana. Rav says the first one is kaina, which is very good according to what we had said before, right? We said if you make a matna shchemira that also has a kinyan, Rav had said that both of you take effect. Both of them have effects. The matnas barrier will be treated like a matnas barrier that even if he dies, it will still be a valid kinyan. But this is not relevant over here. We're talking about here, the issue is whether he gave it to someone else. So this first kinyan was a good kinyan. So the later kinyan, this will also make it that. So this will, in this case, it's going to make it he can't be chayzer. Just like he can't be chayzer if he lives, he also can't be chayzer if he changes his mind. Ushmul amar sheni kana. Shmuel since there was from the first kinyan, and it made it imminent. Because this is a the sheni is coming. He says it's treated like a manis beria. So this is not, this is like a manis beria. Like we said, it gets the aspects of manis beria. Shmuel sheni kana hareika manis chemira. Shmuel had, this is like the second case of Shmuel, right? Not the original case. Right, we made a kinyan, right? But it's like the second case where we said if he gave a star, that it's going to be kani. I'm a little, the has to be miyapa koichai.
When you go to the second guy right now, you wrote it to one again. The cases that you wrote to Reuven, Yaakov wrote to start to Reuven, and gave it to Shimon.
Shmuel amasheni kana. The Mashmei Mara b'chol nechasher in bok kinyan. V'im amad chayzer. V'leil kol she'im amad chayzer. Chayzer hilchach sheni kana. Yeah, the Rashbam explains in the next thing, but we haven't got to that point. But if you look in the middle of the next Rashbam, it says right after the parentheses. It doesn't have that same hayras kaychay that Shmuel had said before, right? That we're saying over here the second one is coming, and we're saying over here that the second one is coming. And the first one we said there was no matna shtemira because there's a kinyan that's negating it. Ta ein kan kinyan the name of gamalak nois el b'shtar bein shtar lachamisa. This he's saying that this second thing was not an actual kinyan. It was just a raya of what was going on.
So the zicha is really not real?
Zicha is not real, yeah.
It's a nice language.
Yeah, this is what I was telling you. This is kasav zichaba. Look at the Rashbam. Kasav zichala. Kasav kol nechazavum. This masal yeshashtar l'rayas chusay. Just as a riot is chus. But then the Rashbam continues. Rav Amarishin Kanada zicha kekinyan chashavlei. V'arei kemanash chimei rasha kasav b'kinyan the arkav atrei v'afilu mamad ein chayzer. He's saying this is enough. This is similar enough to the kinyan that it's going to get aspects of a barrier, even though it's not an actual kinyan. So the way the Rashbam is learning, we're sort of splitting the hair here. We're saying in ways even though it's not precisely like the first case, because if it was precisely like the first case, then Shmuel would not be able to say the second one is kind of, there's no manash kamera at all. So that's why it has to be that it's not an actual kinyan, but he's making a rayas chusay, so it's still, that rayas chusay is enough according to Rav to make it that it's
you can't ignore it. And it is original.
But it's not just that you can't ignore it, it's making like a manas beria that you can't be chayzer on it.
First case, the second
normally
action.
You could be chayzer. And we're saying over here you can't be chayzer. So we're getting, and then the Gemara also has the, let's say the audacity to ask about that we already asked this question before. So we already had this machlekes, but even though the Gemara tzricha, the Gemara says what we're just saying now, but how do you know it's exactly the same thing? We're saying that Rav would say the same din, even though there's not an actual kinyan over here.
What's the two different cases? The original machlekes is when you.
The original is where you actually made a kinyan suda. The Shemera said, I want to give everything to Shimon, and then he also took a suda and said, with this, I want it to be kani to Shimon la'achamisa.
Same guy.
So Rav said that that's an enhancement of the kinyan, and not only is it a kani to Shimon, it's going to be that it can't even be chayzer in it. It's like a barrier that it can't be chayzer. Shmuel said that no, it doesn't. It other Rav, you had a good matnas shemir, and then you make a kinyan suder. that's taken away, and now I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a matnas berya, I don't know if matnas shemira, so therefore there's no matnas shemira at all. It's mevatala.
And now
what we're talking about is where he gave it, Reuven gave it to Shimon as with a matnas shemira, and he gave him also a piece of paper. As he said, I want him to get this. I gave him this piece of paper, but not as a kinyan. But he said, I want this to be your raya that it was given to you. And then later on, he changed his mind. He said, instead of Shimon, I'm giving it to Levi. I changed my mind, which you normally can do with a man. If there's no piece of paper, it's not a problem. You can always change your mind on a man. But the question is, does this piece of paper cause problems? So Rav says the piece of paper doesn't cause a problem. And we're saying that's similar to what he had said before, that if you make a kinyan sudar, it doesn't blow it up. And Shmuel says, Shmuel says, no. So Rav says, Rav says the first kinyan is a full-fledged kinyan, and it gets the din of a barrier, just like if you made a kinyan sudar, it enhanced the kinyan matnas shemira. So too over here, and Shmuel, because you have the right. In this case, it's not a kinyan, it's not mamash a kinyan, like the first case where you made a kinyan sudar, that makes the matnas shemira not be valid. But it does get to this. It is a matnas shemira to the second, just because it's just a raya, so it remains a matnas shemira that you can be chayzer from it, and then the second one has the ability to be a new matnas shemira. But the Gemara is saying, obviously, you can make the chiluk between the first case and this one. One might have, the reason why we needed both, I mean, it's hard to even understand the question. What do you say, fligu b'chadazimnu? We said that it's very different in a lot of ways, but the main point is that according to Rav, if there is a kinyan, it's the first case is talking about where there is an actual kinyan, and therefore the truth is that had it been that same case over here, it wouldn't have worked, because according to Rav, he would not be able to be chayzer. I'm sorry, we're able to be chayzer. So maybe it's only over here, maybe only in the case where he makes an actual kinyan is that he can't be chayzer. But the second one, where there's no kinyan, ema moidele shmuel, maybe Shmuel only said his din in the second one, but in the first case, where there's a kinyan, he'd be moiderav, shricha. Therefore, we needed both of them. The Surah Masnu Hachi, this is the way they had this version in Surah. And for Badisa, they have a different version of this. Masnu Hachi. Amar Rav Yirmi bar Abba, Shachal im Mirav l'Shmuel, Yolamdeinu Rabbeinu. Shchemir Asher Kosav Kol Nechotzav L'Acherim. Shchemir Rav wrote everything to another person. Economy Yad. And he also made a kinyan. Mao. So, what is this case? Do we have it here?
the written case, right?
No, this is not the same case.
Oh, because he wrote it, right?
In this case,
weird. He did Ksiva and then he did
He did all three things. He made it, he's a matnas shemira, and he gave him the star, and he made a kinyan sudar. Mao. He said to him, once you make a kinyan, then there's no din. We're asking this same question: can he be chayzer? What happened if he did this and then he wanted to give to a second person? He said, no. Once you did all these things, it doesn't work. He said, maybe that what you say that you can't be chayzer because you did all these kinyanim. That's only if you give it to someone else. Maybe if the shchemira is saying, I don't want to give it to a second person. I just want to keep it for myself. Maybe over that he has more ability to be chayzer. It doesn't make a difference whether it's for himself or whether it's for others. Once he made all these kinyanim, there's no chazar. There's someone who made such a kinyan, this triple kinyan. He wanted to be chayzer, and he said, there's nothing I can do about it. You didn't do the proper matnas shemira that reserves the right to be chayzer. You lost your ability to be chayzer. Okay, let's wait for this. This is a new thing. We can deal with it separately. Okay.
All
Shkaya.
right. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for coming in.